Welcome to In Your Element, the podcast that unlocks practical wisdom in higher education, where leadership meets real talk. I'm Brendan Hinkle, Manager of Solutions Engineering here at Element451.
And I'm Daniela Norden, Element451's Director of Customer Success and Engagement. Join us every other Thursday for discussions with everyday heroes using Element451 in enrollment, marketing, and student success. We'll unlock the practical tips to help you make waves on your campus.
In Your Element is a part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below.
Enrollify is made possible by Element451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.
All right, we are back live again. That's 3 episodes total live at AMA. I think that's a record for In Your Element with the 3 episodes. I'm not sure. I'll have to check with what Daniela did in North Carolina, but super excited for our next guests here. I have Abbi and Kelsey from Northern Pennsylvania Regional College. Abbi is the Director of Marketing and Public Relations, and Kelsey is the Assistant Director of Recruitment. And I've been talking to them about their journey in implementing and using Element and what's next for them. And man, I am just so excited to have them as guests on the show today. So Abbi, Kelsey, thanks so much for joining me. How's AMA been for you? And also tell me a little bit about your journey. You know, how did it start off with Element and what was implementation like?
Yeah, thanks for having us. AMA has been great. I believe this is my 4th or 5th year here, and I feel like every year it gets better and better content, updated content, new information that we can take back to our institutions. And so I'm always grateful for the opportunity to be here. Our journey started about 3 years ago when we tried to convince our administration that we need a CRM to manage our admissions records. And at that time, I was the admissions coordinator and tracking all of our lead data on spreadsheets and like 8 or 9 spreadsheets for different activities. And it was really, really hard to find data and numbers and just track our applications and things like that. We had a different application system at the time, and we finally got approval for our RFP. We did our interviews, we did our presentations, and we had ended up picking Element. And then we were about 10 months to a year before administration accepted our proposal.
Wow.
And they accepted it actually shortly after sitting down and having dinner with the Element team at National Harbor about 2 years ago. So that was part of the time where they're like, okay, yeah, you talked to them, you did more than we expected you to, let's go. But even at that time, we were working on beginning implementations for student information systems as well. And so they wanted to align all of the implementations of CRM, student information system for both our academic side of the house and our workforce development continuing education. And so we went to launch all of those things together with a new payment portal. And we're finally about a year and 4 months ago, after we brought Kelsey on board, we were finally able to implement Element in a minimal capacity because what our team had wanted to do, or our admissions team had wanted to do at that time, was do all of our decisioning and things like that in our student information systems. I was convincing them to pull them back into Element at the time because they had such a robust decisioning process and able to assign the responsibilities and all of those things. And so that took another year to convince them to do our full admissions process in Element after we kind of did our soft launch. Since then, we've launched our initial application summer of this year. We've launched what we call application 2.0, which is a new application for fall of this year, which had some additional information. And we were able to, in May, our marketing department acquired the recruitment department. And so at that time, we were able to pull decisioning back into the CRM to kind of ease those barriers and challenges that we were facing. And Kelsey, I think, turned around our decisioning process and all of our responsibilities and task assignments and those sorts of things in 6 weeks, if that. So she worked really, really hard to be able to get that launched before our fall application was released to start doing our decisioning and all of those things in Element.
That is quite a journey. And I feel like you all are the masters of like buy-in. Like you're like, no, listen. I mean, I feel like we should offer you a job at Element because you're like, no, listen, this is how you're doing decisioning. You could be doing it so much better. Look at how Element does it. And that is really the key to success that we see with institutions is knowing how to create buy-in with the tools that you're using, whether it's Element or another tool, right? It's if you can't create the buy-in and the belief that this tool is something that we have to make our lives easier and to make our students' lives ultimately impact the students' lives for the better, then it's going to fail. Doesn't matter how good the tool is, it's going to fail. I also remember, you were telling me a story of, all of the cool things that you all are doing in Element and the things that you were seeing, like in the buzz that it's created on campus. Can you tell a listener a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we implemented Element, we were again like, talking like turning back to buy-in. We were saying we can do all of these email communications through the system, and the student information systems that we were implementing at the time didn't have the robust tools to be able to do the segmentation, to be able to do some of the communications for the decisioning. And we were having some pretty great challenges with some of our student information system implementations. And during that time, and even into the present, Element has been the easiest implementation that we've had. We've had minimal to no challenges with the implementation and any integrations that we're utilizing with Element. And now people within our institution are realizing the value and the capacity and the capabilities of what we can do in Element. And so when we launched, it was Kelsey and I in the system, right? Kelsey was brought on board about a year and a half ago, so she kind of got a crash course right into Element when she came on board, and she's just picked it up and ran. But when we started showing the communications that we're able to do, when we started showing some of the results that we were getting, which Kelsey will get into in a couple minutes, now it's not just Kelsey and I in the system, it's the registrar, it's the admissions coordinator, it's workforce development, it's potentially the advisors, and so everybody's being like, and even our president is like, you have a tool. Can you send this email to students?
Yeah.
And so even our president now is coming to us for her student communications to be able to distribute those materials. And so everyone is like no matter what the conversation is, I feel like always Abbi and Kelsey can do that. Abbi and Kelsey can do that, And so it's taken our workload from, somewhat manageable, a little bit underwater to, floundering most of the days because we got 35 student communications just from the registrar alone that we're working on implementing into automations and workflows or saved replies for some of our standard academic progress communications for suspension or probation and those sorts of things.
Awesome. One more question, and I think the listener would really appreciate this before we move over to Kelsey and start talking about results and what you're currently doing. For everyone out there, getting buy-in is not easy. I've talked to a lot of schools, and it's honestly been one of the biggest challenges for them. What is it that you all have found that you have done that you can share with the listener that could maybe give them some sort of inkling of like, maybe I can try that and maybe I can get some success because I really want something like Element or something else they can really help us, but I can't get that buy-in that I need.
Yeah, so I think a lot of it really just comes down to persistence. I mean, I mentioned this was a 3-year process for us before we got the contract and were able to implement. But I think one of the biggest things to align with your persistence is making sure you have those use cases. For us, we're a small institution. My marketing department is me and 2 other people, and then Kelsey as our director of recruitment. Yeah. And so one of the biggest questions is, how is this going to make your life easier? Yeah. Right? How is this going to make your job more efficient, or how is this going to save time? And so I think being able to identify those cases for the individuals you're trying to get buy-in from is the biggest thing. And at our institution, we're not super siloed, so there is some idea of what everybody else does, but there wasn't a level of knowledge on the number of leads or the amount of traffic or any of those sorts of things. And we were going through a web build at the same time. Yeah. And so we were able to get that was able to help us get some buy-in for utilizing the forms and improving our RFI process and all of those sorts of things, because we were doing related tasks that would align some of that data tracking, data management, segmentation, those sorts of things. So top two things are persistence and just making sure that you have those use cases for efficiency. And I think those are key.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very, very valuable. All right, Kelsey, it's your turn now, right? We've talked about, how Element really came in to North Pennsylvania and it's made changes for the better as long as the journey was. But now, how is it going? What are you doing in it? And what does that look like for you as a team and as an individual?
So the first year that we implemented Element, we had about 434 leads between May of 2023 and September of that same year. When we looked at the numbers currently between May of 2024 and September of this year, we over doubled that. We've had over 1,400 leads through the system. So part of that has been building out those inquiry forms, various places on our website, just to be able to better collect prospective student information, whether that's for an academic program or interest in a workforce program, and then implementing those tasks that Element lets you do to assign follow through to my recruiters. So we're making sure that, every potential touch point that comes through the system is having, whether it's an automated communication that's going to that student or an automated communication and potentially a direct communication, whether that's a text message or an email or a phone call, from our recruiters. We also have seen an increase in the efficiency in our application. I think on average, it takes students between 5 and 10 minutes to fill out the application if they sit down and fill out the whole thing from start to finish.
That's cool.
We've also really been able to help our admissions department with collecting the required documents for our students, whether that's a transcript or a permission form for a high school student, because we can do those requests straight through the application. And that's really helped with the turnaround time, of processing applications from, the point of being submitted to the point of being admitted. For the fall this year, we were able to move 77% of our students to the admitted stage. So that's been fantastic.
Those are some staggering numbers, especially the 1,402 leads compared to the 434 from the year before. That's wild. And it's a perfect picture of, again, there's a lot of good tools out there on the market, right? Element 451 is one of many good tools that are out there. It's a testament because, you guys didn't just get a tool and then plug it in and say, let's go. There's strategy that went into this and thought process that went into this because you all could see where you were at. Could you see, actually, that's a good question. Could you see where you were at before Element?
So this past summer, when we implemented the Element application, was the first time we were really able to truly see funnel results.
Wow.
And be able to see the percentage of students that we were actually, moving from the applicant stage to the enrolled student stage. So we did have a 24% yield for the summer. We've increased that to a 38% yield for the fall. And I think, part of that is the simplified application, but just being able to see where potentially we were losing students in the process so that we could, build additional follow through or tasks or simplify the process to be able to keep them.
Yeah. That's huge. And one of the other interviews I had here at AMA was with Texas State Technical College, their CMO, Michael Bettersworth. And he had they had a similar problem with application conversion rates. So they were seeing an abandonment rate of about 70% on their application prior to Element. And then they moved into Element. And now they've been seeing this consistently, but within the first 3 months of launching Element, they were seeing 85 to 90% completion rate as opposed to the 30% that they were seeing before. And I think that that's just a continual trend I'm starting to see with people who implement the application module because of all the tools that are there to reduce the friction points, right? And you've seen that, right? You've seen that in the students that you have, your yield increasing, and it looks like just continuing to trend upwards. So that's really cool. Whenever you started, right, you got your crash course, you started, what were some of the, other than going in and changing the decisioning and the tasks, what were some of your first changes that you implemented and built out in there that people can think of as like, these are the first things that we can do to start seeing really quick results?
So we started with a large import of all of our current prospect pool, and then tried to sort of be able to label appropriately, who people are and what they're interested in, and create some workflows that allow us to automatically assign, this is a high school student or this is somebody who's interested in a workforce program, and then be able to assign those automatic follow-up tasks to my recruiters as well. That was huge just with the efficiency. Previous system was kind of a combined SIS CRM, so it didn't always have the communication capabilities that Element has for us. So that was kind of our first step. And then secondary step was the addition of the application. And then from there, building out the different communications that tie into that, whether that's the reminder to complete your application, a reminder to submit your application. We're in the process of finalizing the details to do the hey, you submitted your application, but we don't have your transcript kind of checklist follow up. So that's kind of been the initial and where we're at sort of process.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I have to ask, are you all using any of the AI capabilities of Element right now? And we can cut this out if you don't have any. But are you using any of those?
So the only piece that I've kind of dabbled in is the AI for the subject and preview line.
Yep.
So that's one of the pieces that I really lean on heavily.
Yeah.
While I am the director of marketing, I do love to write. Like that marketing writing and those sorts of things aren't really in my wheelhouse. And I'm okay admitting that. And so that capability for me has been helpful because it's just way more creative, way more engaging than I could just spit out, on the dime. So that's one of the tools we use. We do have plans, and it is in Kelsey's plans to utilize BoltBot for our students on our website. So that's something that'll be coming to build that knowledge base and things like that.
That's awesome. I think you are going to see even more tremendous results whenever you start using that, especially whenever it comes to initially just providing accessibility, getting alleviation of frontline support on your team. I think you'll see a big impact. So Devin here, who won the Emerging Marketer of the Year last year at Forsyth Tech, they're one of their Element partner, and they launched BoltBot, and they also launched our Discovery, which is the generative search on the website, and they saw an 80% decrease in conversations that had to get to a staff member. And it's just been one of those things that has just helped out a ton. So I think you see that. So staying on the same topic of what's next, you were talking to Mallory and you were telling her about some of the things that are on the horizon for you guys, on the pretty close horizon. And one that stood out to me, because this is one that we always talk about being a strong capability of Element, but not all of our partners take advantage of it, which is advancement. And I would love to know kind of the thought process behind what you're wanting to use it for, and kind of the goal and what you're aiming to do, and kind of what the timeline for that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started we had a donor portal, or we had like a donor system that we used to utilize, and it didn't have like the tracking, the monitoring, those true CRM capabilities. So yeah, it tracked your donations, it tracked your donors, but it didn't have those true CRM capabilities for the communications, the follow up, and all of that. And so what we initially did for advancement is, when we discontinued that system, just like when we implemented the CRM, we did an import of all of our donors and those sorts of things. And some of the KPIs that we were tracking were, last date given, last value given, those sorts of things. So we built those into the fields. We put those into the profiles. And then we also so just last week, we launched a donor online donation form. So we were able to connect it to our payment portal, and we're still working through some of the kinks on that, but we did launch that. We launched the payment portal, but in that donor form, we linked the last date donated, the last value given. So when people fill out the online donation form, those values are already tracked for our advancement coordinator. And so she just has to go in and cross check. She doesn't have to go in, fill in the blanks, and go in and track all of that information. So those were some of the initial steps that we did. Some of the things that we're moving forward is we have our first fundraising event in March. And so we're operating through both. So we put donors in the system as volunteers, as a profile type, just to keep it differentiated from our influencers or our businesses, our business contacts and our students.
Yeah.
So we have them set as that profile type. But we're also using the events module to run ticketing and those sorts of things for our fundraising event. So we can have all of that money going into the same account and we're able to balance it out at the end, you know. And then we are also launching a sponsorship form. So when we made an attempt in the past, we were doing paper forms for sponsorships and things like that. And so moving into March, when we do this event, we'll be able to have the online sponsorship form. They'll go directly into our, you know, donation module as a donor. And then we'll have all those records that we can link any additional activities to during the event or those sorts of things. So I'm really excited to see how that plays out in the coming months.
Yeah.
And we also, from a alumni perspective, we're importing all of our graduates into our donor profiles and donor systems so we can start moving those, compile that alumni database, and hopefully in the future have some alumni campaigns and those sorts of things that support our advancement department.
I feel like I need to drop the microphone right now because no, but seriously, you guys are using Element the exact way that we preach it, right? That we show it to people. It's like this doesn't just have to be your recruitment and admissions tool. This can be that single layer of engagement for every touch point that student experiences, from their very first hand raise all the way through to when they're an alumni. And you guys are living proof that is true through execution. And I love that. And so, wow, man, this has been such a good interview. I've appreciated both of you coming on and talking about this. There's one thing that we do on this show every single time. At the end of the show, I ask our guests, when are you in your element? So I'm going to go to each of you. And this doesn't have to be when you're using Element. It doesn't have to be a work related thing. It can be anything, right? It can be, right? It can be your career related, or it can be something else. But I will start with Kelsey to talk about when she is in her element, and then we'll get it over to Abby.
So I'll give you two answers. Outside of work, I am a theater girly.
Oh,
So I am most in my personal element when I get to be on a stage. Work-wise, and this is like a super cheesy, nerdy answer, but I think I get most excited or most in my element when we build one of these workflows, we test it, and everything does exactly what it's supposed to do.
It feels
So it feels so good.
It feels so good. So a little bit about me, you may not know this. So I was on our customer success team prior to being in my role now, which is in solutions engineering. But I would, test things out for people, help them build them out and test it out. And I agree with you. There is nothing like that feeling. There's two of those feelings that I got. It's whenever you build a segment and it pulls the right students that you intended, and whenever you run a workflow and it just works, and it is just a good feeling. So I resonate with that. And I have to ask, being a theater girly, are you excited for Wicked coming out? Yeah?
Yeah, so excited.
Yeah.
Cannot wait.
Yeah, so my girls haven't seen Wicked in any capacity. They're young. But they've seen the trailer for the movie and they're like enamored with it. Like they don't know this and they won't listen to this, but we got them like the limited edition Barbies that came out. So they have those. So they're super excited for it. So I have some theater girlies of my own in the house. So I'm super excited for that. But awesome. Very cool. All right, Abby, what about you?
I passed it over to Kels first because this question made me nervous. But I'm going to answer like her. I have two things. So personally, I'm a high school coach. I coach our 10-year-old son for soccer, and I just got my first head coaching high school job. So being on the pitch, being on the field, coaching and seeing the success of our team. And we weren't very great. And we played some very, very tough teams, but being able to coach them beginning to end and not have them give up beginning to end is when I'm most in my element in my personal life. But from a work perspective, honestly, and acquiring Kelsey's team has been really great for this. But when I see the successes of my teams and am able to talk about it and share with our teams, like I feel like that's when I'm most in my element, because I feel like I was able to support them. I was able to give them the tools and equip them to be able to have those successes and own those successes for themselves. And that's not just for Kelsey, it's for our graphic designer and our content specialist as well. But like in my element as a leader, that's really where I find the most.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Yeah, I mean, even in your personal life, just hearing the life that it brings you to see that progression with the teams that you're coaching. I will personally say, I coached my son's basketball team one time, and I had to step away from coaching his football team. I love sports, and my son loves sports, but man, that was hard to separate coach and parent. And that was a very hard line for me to toe. So it sounds like you're doing a great job on that. So keep it up. I stepped back. I didn't want to fight that battle anymore. But just hearing that leadership mentality of you is really awesome, and it's no surprise to hear the success that you have had with using Element and working at Northern Pennsylvania. And so thanks again, guys. AMA has been great. Thanks for talking with us, and I'm super excited to hear what you guys do. We'll have to have you on like a full episode with me and Daniela once you get all these new things up and running, and we'll talk even more about the success that you've had. So thanks so much, and yeah, have a safe trip back and great rest of AMA.
In Your Element is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too.
Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional.
Our shows help higher ed marketers and enrollment professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your host. Learn from Mallory Wilsey, Artis Kadu, Maya Demishkovich, and so many other of your favorite leaders in higher ed.
Enrollify is made possible by Element451, the leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.